This is the story of James and Victoria, two ordinary people who found something extraordinary on a Saturday morning and paid a price for it that neither of them was prepared for. James Calloway was 33 years old, a history teacher at a small secondary school in Millfield, a quiet town where the streets emptied by 9 in the evening, where everyone knew everyone else's business, and nobody particularly minded. James was a calm man, methodical, the kind of man who wore the same 3 sweaters in rotation, ate the same breakfast every morning, and spent his evenings going through old books and dusty documents, looking for things that had been forgotten. Because James believed, deeply and without apology, that the most interesting things in the world were never on the surface. They were always underneath, buried, waiting. Victoria Marsh was 31, a photographer who shot weddings on weekends to pay the rent and spent every other waking hour doing what she actually loved: climbing into abandoned places, documenting what was left behind before it disappeared entirely. She carried her camera everywhere, the way other people carry their phones, automatically, without thinking, because she was always afraid of missing something unrepeatable. She had lived with James for 4 years, in a small flat above a bakery on the high street. She slept on the left side of the bed, left her camera on the kitchen table instead of putting it away, forgot to replace the milk, and was the single most restless person James had ever met. And he loved her for it, completely. Together, they had a rule: always together, always careful, always home by dark. A rule that had kept them safe every single time. Right up until the Saturday they found the bunker. It was on a sleepless Thursday night in early October that James found the map, buried inside a box of wartime documents, bought at an estate auction for £11. A hand-drawn map on yellowed paper, showing the countryside outside Millfield. And in the bottom left corner, marked with a small black X, and the words, "Sub-level access. Restricted." He photographed the map, sent it to Victoria, without a single word of explanation. She replied in 40 seconds. One word: Saturday. And that was that. The decision made the way their best and worst decisions always were. In one word: clean. Irreversible. They arrived on a gray October morning, crossed the wet field, found the hatch exactly where the X said it would be. Rusted iron, set flat into the ground, half hidden under years of overgrown grass. James knelt and examined the padlock. It was already open, the shackle hanging loose. He and Victoria looked at each other. She said nothing. He said nothing. They pulled the hatch open and looked down into the darkness below. And the smell that came up, it was cold and metallic and old. The smell of sealed air that had not moved in a very long time. James climbed down first. Victoria followed, her camera already in her hand. The bunker opened at the bottom of the ladder into a long concrete corridor. Low ceiling, ribbed steel floor, walls painted institutional green, peeling in long strips. Doors on either side, some open, some sealed. The air was cold, still, heavy with something James could not name. And then Victoria grabbed his arm and pointed. At the far end of the corridor, a sliver of warm light, yellowish, coming from under a closed door. James told himself it was the old wiring, a fault, a circuit that had never quite died. He told himself this all the way to the door. He pushed it open. They stepped inside and stopped. The room was furnished, not with wartime equipment, with living things. A narrow bed, gray blanket, pillow indented, as if someone had recently risen from it. A small table, 2 chairs, a gas burner, a kettle, and beside the kettle, 2 ceramic cups. James reached out and touched the side of one cup and pulled his hand back because the cup was warm and the tea inside was still steaming, made perhaps 10 minutes ago, perhaps 5, perhaps less than 5 minutes. They left the room immediately, went back to the ladder, and that was when they found the hatch above them was closed. James went up, pushed with both hands, his shoulder, everything he had. It did not move. They went deeper into the bunker, past the furnished room, past overturned filing cabinets, past obsolete machinery, past a room that had once been a communications center. The corridor going on, longer than it should have. Longer than any building above could account for. The air growing colder. The ceiling lower. Their torch beams thinner in the dark. And then Victoria grabbed his arm again and pointed at the floor. Boot prints. Fresh ones. Sharp, clear edges in the thin layer of dust. Someone with a longer stride than either of them, going in the same direction they were walking. not coming back. They followed them without meaning to, because the prints went the same way they needed to go. And after another 50 meters, the corridor turned right. They turned with it. And James stopped so suddenly that Victoria walked into his back. Because ahead of them, 20 meters away, standing completely still in the center of the corridor, with his back to them, was a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark clothing, not moving. Head slightly tilted, as if listening to something. James called out, told him they were just exploring, that the hatch had closed, that they needed an exit. The man did not move, did not turn, did not respond in any way, just stood there in the torchlight, perfectly still. James took one step forward, said it again, and on the word exit, every light went out. His torch, Victoria's torch, all of it, simultaneously. Total darkness. Victoria grabbed his arm with both hands. They stood completely still and listened and heard nothing for a very long time. And then heard, from ahead of them in the dark, one slow footstep. And then another. And then silence. And then, from directly behind them, very close, the sound of breathing that was not theirs. James turned on his phone torch, swept it around. The corridor was empty. In both directions. And he said one word. Run. They ran. Back past every room. Back to the ladder. James hit the hatch. It swung open easily, as if it had never been stuck at all. They came out into the gray afternoon, crossed the field, got in the car. James drove. Neither of them spoke for a very long time. It was 3 miles from the field when Victoria turned on her camera. She went through the photographs quietly, without speaking. And after a long silence, she said his name. James. In a voice he had not heard from her before. A voice with no expression in it at all. He pulled over, took the camera from her hands, and looked. The walls of the furnished room, every inch of them, floor to ceiling, covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Thousands, perhaps. All couples. Different ages, different decades, different eras. Always inside the bunker. Always from behind, from a distance. Always unaware they were being watched. All those people who had found the map, or heard the rumor, or followed the X on someone's old document. All of them led to the same hatch, the same field, the same warm cup of tea that was not theirs. James scrolled slowly until he reached the bottom right corner of the wall, where two photographs sat slightly apart from the others, as if placed there recently. The first showed him and Victoria crossing the wet field that very morning from a vantage point that should not have existed, because there had been no one in that field. He was certain of it. The second photograph showed the two of them from behind, in the corridor. Close. No more than 3 feet. Their torch beams cutting the dark. And in the shadows, just beyond their light, a face, half turned toward the camera, watching them, and smiling. The way a person smiles when things have gone exactly according to plan. And below both photographs, in neat small handwriting on a strip of white paper, 6 words. Welcome back. You always come back. James set the camera down on the seat between them and looked at the road ahead. And Victoria did not ask what he had seen, because she had already seen it. Outside, the gray October sky was darkening toward evening. And somewhere behind them, in the empty field, the iron hatch was open. And the warm light from below was the only light left in the world. And from very far away, or perhaps from very close by, it was difficult to tell, came the faint sound of a kettle beginning to boil.